Put it together. Mr. Kinney is going to start off today talking about our missions team, our care team, and a few other exciting things that are going off. Secondly, we're going to have Katie talking about our finances. Then we are going to talk. I will talk about the news in the Methodist denominations. Then we will spend some time talking about our music and what's been going on and what will go on. Fifth, we'll talk about some facility improvements with Miss Sherry and also Mike. And sixthly, we're going to finalize by kind of a vision for the rest of the year that me and Mr. Kinney have, kind of a goal that we're going to be working toward with getting volunteers incorporated into the church. So that's our agenda. Would you like to start us off with prayer, and then you can take item number one?
Let's pray. My gracious God, thank you so much again for this day and just for the breath of life to be able to breathe in and to breathe out, and just for gathering us together at this time, Lord, just to have a time of celebration, to see all the things that you're doing in your church and how you let us get to be a part of all of that, God. I thank you for what you're going to let us hear today, and let it be words that you speak through to move us to greater places in our discipleship, to be able to do our part to grow your church. So thank you for who you are and for what you're going to do in the time that we spend together, for it is in your holy name that we pray, Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about our missions team first. I wanted, for you all to hear that missions is alive and well here at the Lord's Church here in Alvin. Yeah, it's worth a hand. It is. Because we are, that's what it's all about. That's who we are, right? Doing things to show the love and the grace of God, to be able to grow God's kingdom, and He allows us to be a part of that in so many big and special ways. Some of the things I just wanted to bring to our attention to kind of highlight so you can see, a lot of times we don't get to hear all the things that are going on because we're in different places at different times and that sort of thing, and things going on. So some of the things, just to recap, that we've done in the past, we have been able to be a part of helping LOL at Thanksgiving feed people. We've been able to be a part of feeding people at Christmas time. We've been able to be a part of going out to Stevenson Elementary and being a part of supporting, walking alongside them, the staff and the teachers, being able to provide them a breakfast, being able to provide for the needs. And I'm proud to say we've made a big difference in the lives of a lot of families and teachers at Stevenson Primary this year with the things that we furnished for families that they might not otherwise be able to afford. Even it is recent here as spring break, we were able to help some families out to be able to have the essentials that they needed to make it through the week. We have given cards, gift cards for them to be able to purchase things for families along the way when it's needed. The school and the principal there have been able to direct traffic there in that way to know what's really needed and at the time that it's needed. So we're able to provide that for them in bountiful ways, and I'm proud to say that we're all a part of that. We provided hygiene bags for women that are living on the street, just to highlight a few things. We have also helped our youth ministries by helping seed their trips and their plans that they have for this summer to go and to celebrate Christ and to grow. I always like to say, too, when we hear this word spring thing, we think, oh, my Lord, here we go again. All this work. We're going to be having all this stuff brought to the church. But I want to tell you something. That's part of the mission of the church, is to introduce people to Christ. That's a way that, see, it's not just stuff that's sold there, but it's a way that we can be able to make relationships with people, to re-enter into a conversation with people that used to be here. There's a time that we're able to afford for families to be able to show their self-worth, to be able to be encouraged, that they can be able to come and to buy some things that their budget might not otherwise allow. For a quarter, for 10 cents, you wouldn't believe the difference that you're making in people's lives. For them to be able to come and say, I take ownership of this, and this is something that I'm proud of. And it was that Methodist church down there that does this every year. There's something about that. You don't know we might not have all of those people in this church inside these walls, but God's kingdom is being built by the things that are going on here in the mission field. I'm happy to say that we have even bigger plans, for the missions team. There's been a group of people that have signed up to take people to their doctor's appointments, to their grocery store, whatever needs there is. I can tell you in the future, hopefully in the near future, I'm working on with the mission team to get a group of men to go and to do like little things for people. With our seasoned group of men, we're not able to build houses or anything, but we are able to go change light bulbs, and we are able to do a few things, maybe once a month or twice a month or something like that. Also, the big picture is to be able to be innovative about what we do in reaching out to people, to have them to see that Christ is calling them into a relationship. Wesley and I went down, was it last week, this past week? Yeah. And we went to a place that's called The Harvest. It's down right around Danbury. It's right near Oyster Creek. But it is a place where a doctor, David Wong, who is a emergency room doctor out at Veterans Hospital, and he has taken it upon himself to see a lot of his patients that come in have the ailments that they do because of not eating right. So what he's done is he's bought 61 acres of land out there, has 30 of it that is in a lake with fish. It's stocked with all kinds of fish. And also they are growing fresh produce out there. It's all volunteer. All of the food goes to, actually it's going to, was going to the Houston Food Bank. Now it's going to some of the food pantries around, and now it's going to a ministry in Houston, another ministry. It's called Bread of Life, I think is what it's called. But anyway, that just opens our eyes of how we might be able to, as a church, go down there and support something like that. How we might be able to start our own garden. I mean, I'm just throwing things out there, but who knows? We might start a community garden over here on this property that God allowed for us to have, years ago. So I don't know what that looks like, but I can tell you one thing that we are working towards, and God is leading us in a way to open our eyes to the things that are going around, that are around us, and opportunities that we'll be able to be a part of. I'm excited about that. I pray that you are too. I pray that, as the mission team, all we do is just put ideals together, and we kind of keep the fire lit all the time. But the mission team is all of us here and all the ones that are not here. It's about us being all together as one to be able to do that. So let's see if I was leaving anything out here that I wanted to share. Yeah, and it's not just local here. It's also international, as we have led trips into Mexico for the past 15 years pre-COVID. This summer, we will be heading into Mexico to the city of Galeana in the state of Nuevo Leon, the same place that we've been going for years, to be able to go there and to continue the ministry with our brothers and sisters in Mexico. It's an honor for us to be able to do that on an international basis. So it's going to be July the 30th through August the 6th is when the trip is planned. You're going to start to hear more about that. I would pray that some of you might consider that if your calendar allows and your heart allows and you feel like God's moving you in that direction, to come be a part of that. In saying that, earlier this year, if you remember, we provided some oxygen concentrators for some people over there that were in dire need of their life being maintained and being able to live, being able to have their life sustained. So we were a part of that in big ways. There's also, you're going to see in the near future, once we get construction all together and everything, you're going to actually see a missions booth. You see, we have a missions table now down there, but it's going to be on a scale to where you'll be able to see the different ministries that are going on. You'll have somebody there to talk to you about that, and more information about how you can get plugged into that. The mission team now is in the process of developing a brochure that, why is missions important to you? We want to hear feedback from that in the missions team, that's what we're working towards, to be able to be a part of that. Also, you know, there's little things like the little newsletter. I don't know if some of you have seen, but it's usually on the missions table once a month. It'll speak to some things that are going on. One of the things that we're in the process of launching that we hope that grows is random acts of kindness, to where there'll be things that we'll be doing in the community as a group. And also, you know, I know that there's a lot of silent servants in the Lord's church here, and they don't speak up about things. And I'm not saying to call attention to yourself. That's not what we're supposed to do at all. But with the random acts of kindness in the newsletter, we're going to start putting challenges out there, just like there was a week before. You know, here's a challenge for you this month. Did you pay for somebody's lunch that was behind you in the fast food line? Have you went into a cleaners? Have you left some quarters on top of a dryer? Have you done little things like that? And what we would like to see is for you to, I don't need your name, we don't need your name, we don't need where you went or any of that. Just hopefully we're going to have a way to tally that where you can just go up and put a mark there. And we can be able to kind of look at ourselves in a visual way to see, are we living up to the vision that God calls us to go and make disciples of Jesus Christ, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey my commands. You know, that's what we're all about in missions. Just a quick word on our care group. We are we kind of got discombobulated with all the office stuff and trying to get everything off the ground, but I will say this, that we are moving along those lines. There is 5 of us that are in that right now, that we're working towards being able to care for our congregation in better ways and being able to check in. I know that all of you, even though you're not on that care team, you are on the care team, because I see you all over the place, out visiting people, out being there and for them. So I want you to know that the care team here is being developed in big ways with those of us that are a part of that, and hopefully that's going to grow and it's going to blossom, and we're going to do greater things. So with that, I'm not going to go on, because I know probably by now that food's starting to settle. And yeah, as I always say, I was talking to, who was it, Jeremiah earlier, yeah, and he said, you know, it's about time to go home and get a nap. And I said, yeah, buddy. I said, you know what causes that is it stretches the skin on your stomach and it pulls your eyelids down, and it's all over after that. But he looked at me being the age he is and says, huh? What do you mean? So I don't know, but who do we have next year, Wesley? Where's our Katie? Here you go, ma'am.
All right, well, I'm Katie Austin, if y'all don't know me. I used to be one of those silent people that sits out here in the congregation, except of course if y'all see me when we played bells and I'd be the one dancing. But when I'm dancing, I am worshiping God. Music means everything to me, in case y'all don't know that. But professionally, I am a financial analyst at Texas Children's Hospital in the pharmacy department, and that helps satisfies my soul, because even though I'm not taking care of patients, I'm taking care of the families to help ensure that we're charging this right. So missions do mean a lot to me. He talks about spring thing. You know, that's the human connection that I know I need, because I don't do that as well, because I'm behind the scenes. But you also will see I'm the number cruncher, I'm the bean counter. Y'all hate me. They all hate me at my job. If we don't have a church that serves these people and gives us a home base to serve them, what do? So yeah, I got the unlikely task of telling you that unfortunately, we're not bringing in enough money every week to pay for just our basic services. AC, you like AC, don't you? I do. The light bill. Pastor Kenny, we're blessed to have Kenny in our church, but you know, it's a salary we have to pay. You know, he has to live too. We're blessed with Wesley. Wesley hit us hard today, so I'm the one doing the offending right now. We are doing okay. I don't want you to think the way I'm talking means that we're not doing okay. We are. Expenses are up. We all feel it. Rent is through the roof. Food is through the roof. You can't get what you need, want. Our discretionary funds where we go out and have a movie night with our spouse or, whatever. If they're open, you can't go because it's just way out of my pocket range. And I'll say that in my book. And I'm single. I have no kids. I have no life. I mean, I take care of my parents, and I will not regret that in a heartbeat. But the church, this building means everything to me. And what I'm here to tell you is, unfortunately, since about September last year, we're averaging about 30% less income than what we're spending for our salaries, the AC, the maintenance of the building. I'm not talking completely just the funds these people need. I mean, awesome job by Dr. Chad Brown. I'm not trying to call you out, but he has a kids ministry. How do you keep kids engaged? You need the resources to do that, and not just people. People absolutely, I need to give more towards that because I haven't been blessed with kids, but kids are awesome and they're our future. But if you don't have all the resources we need to touch them and reach out to them, where are we? Where are we going to be in 10 years? So I'm not trying to plead with you to give more money because I get it, because it's hard. But just know, when we come up here and tell you this and the numbers you see in the bulletin, we're just trying to keep in line with the budget was approved, with the staff, the wonderful staff that we have. We love our staff, might not show it as well as we need to, that they're doing the best they can with the resources we have. And, we up here standing, like Kenny, asking money for missions. It's absolutely a vital part of this church, not minimizing that at all. But again, if we don't have this physical building with the people we have in place, hopefully to help us steer us in the direction that God wants us to go, what will we do then? And so yes, we're still doing okay, and I'm not trying to tell you we're not, but I'm that unlucky person that likes to understand if we potentially might be heading down somewhere, can we stop it or negate it before it gets worse, if that is the true case. And as I said, I don't see that. But just know that we are trying to watch that and make sure that we have the resources and people in place to do what we need. And I'm sorry, I'm very passionate about this. Thank you.
Does anybody have questions before Katie sits down? Yeah. So we're going to try to have the questions dispersed a bit throughout the presentations so that we don't just have lots of questions at the end. And if it becomes to be too many questions, what we're going to do is say, hey, would you write those down? And then we'll do this again, and we'll address those questions because some of them might be more intensive. Okay. The question was, is this building paid for? Yes, this building has been paid for from the beginning. We don't have any debt on our building whatsoever. It's true. Any other questions? So we built our budget this year based on what we brought in last year. We didn't try to increase it at all, but from the very beginning of this year and a few months before, we've noticed that people just haven't been giving as much as they were last year. So we're not exactly sure why that is, except mostly for inflation. But if you have other reasons you can help us with, let us know, and we'll try to address whatever we can to help you to feel confidence in the state of our church. So other questions with budget? Okay, that was, if you also want to know, I forgot to mention this, but our leadership board started in January, the single board model, and we have a website where we put all of our minutes and all of our budget for the year on there. So it's just alvinmethodist.com, or .org, /leadership board. If you need me to spell that, ask someone else. I don't have it up there. LEADERBORD. leadership board, and then it has all the, like an abbreviation of what the meeting was about, and then you can, a month after the fact, we have an abbreviation because we can't send out the meeting minutes until they have been approved at the next month's meeting. So we give you a quick snapshot to let you know what we discussed, and then the month after, retrospectively, we publish the official minutes on the website so that you are aware. Correct. So you'll be able to see everything that we talked about, unless it's. Go ahead. Was something over here? Oh. Hey, look at that. Everyone thank Matthew in the back. Thank you. All right, so now, the Bible. Well, I'm just going to. A pen. If it's not, then we'll make sure we have a version up there, because that's important. Good. Thank you for that. I just assumed it was, but if it's not, we'll make sure it is. Thank you. Okay. Now I'll get the fun task of talking about the Methodist Church. So I'm trying to today just tell you the news, the headlines. I'm not even here to tell you a side or a spectrum. I'm going to give you all the options of what's could happen. But the truth is, I'm going to end this by saying there's a lot of question marks and a lot of unknown right now, so I can't really give you any details because I don't know everything, but I'll tell you what has been going on. And I guess in the last 30 years, our church has started taking a little bit of a verge in differences of opinion when it comes, I'd say, largely from the way we interpret Scripture, and it has to do with theology as well. And most of the time, the reason I love being a Methodist is we have been a big umbrella where everybody might disagree, but we find a way to love each other in the midst of our disagreements. And largely, that's the church that I fell in love with. That I love the fact that there's a church, I'll just name a few out, the Woodlands United Methodist Church that might be on one spectrum of theology, and then we have some churches that just do amazing work downtown, and they might disagree on aspects in between, but I love being in a church that helps the homeless in downtown and also does something completely different in another location. But it's come to the point where that tension that we have tried to live under began to become to a breaking point. And where that largely came was in I remember it explicitly. It was the day my daughter was born, and I'm trying to remember the date. I know it was December 20th. The year is, she's 8 years ago. We'll just say that. 8.5 years ago. Was the first time that I would say a pastor performed a same-sex wedding. And it made the headlines. I think his last name was Schaefer. And I remember it because I was getting ordained and in a meeting with people, and they said, how would you deal with this issue? And I just honestly told them, look, I'm not going to make it a say on this, but it breaks my heart that on the day that my daughter was born, that's the headline that's in the newspaper about how we can't agree on things. So I remember it because I was at a momentous point in my life. That kind of started the bandwagon, and then about 4 years later, after General Conference, we elected a first homosexual bishop into now she's in the Colorado Conference. And then we started seeing a lot of churches saying, I'll give you both sides of the spectrum here, saying, look, in the same way that we used to not ordain women, in the same way that many churches used to allocate for slavery, we find that this practice is unjust, and so we're not going to abide by the book of discipline as a moral issue. So we began to see a large chunk of the United States churches saying the book of discipline says this thing, but we're going to not live into that covenant, and we're going to do what we want to do out of a moral standard. And so that began to kind of start really the fracture in the church. And then in 2020, or right before 2020, the Methodist Church hired Mr. Feinberg up in New York as a lawyer to have all the sides from all the different spectrums in the church together around a table and say, what is something we can agree on? And let's start there. And so they worked, and I'm no telling how much money we paid him. Actually, I think he did it for free to help the church. And the one thing they agreed upon was we probably need to split up into two different denominations because we can't agree on anything really except for that. And we're tired of 30 years of going to General Conference, and this seems to be an arguments back and forth the whole time we spend largely on one issue. And I think it's so much distracted our church from this issue so much that we have stopped really focusing on making disciples. So they agreed to that, and the 2020 General Conference, they were supposed to put forth the legislation that says we agree for an amicable separation. So any church, any annual conference that wants to leave, we are going to allow them to leave without any sort of penalty. And the penalty being you don't have to, right now, the annual conference or the Methodist Church owns our building. The local church does not own it. So if any church before that agreement said we want to leave, they say you can happily go wherever you want, but we keep your property. And under this agreement, it was at the 2020 annual conference, once they voted on it, everyone could do whatever they wanted to without any sort of penalty of paying anything, doing whatever. But 2020 annual general conference did not happen. And I can't make any decisions for the church. Our bishop can't make any decisions for the church. The annual conference can't make any decisions for the church. The only one that can ever make a decision with the church is general conference. And that's when we have delegates from all over the world that come together to a conference center, and they vote on what is our official stances in the church. And you can imagine in 2020 why it was not a good idea to have people from all over the globe meeting together in one room. Not only was it, most people couldn't get visas to make it happen, but also it was just not a proper thing to do. So they postponed it. And then many people postponed it to 2022 of this year. It was August, I believe, of this year. There was supposed to be the general conference. And everything at that point was pretty much we're going to do what we were supposed to do in 2020 annual conference. Everybody who wanted to leave could do that. Those that didn't want to could stay. Everything was going to be the path forward for that. And then about a month ago, the headlines were General Conference postponed again. So instead of doing it in 2022, they postponed it to 2024. So that's what you've seen in the headlines of the Methodist Church. And behind the scenes, this what started off as a group called the Wesleyan Covenant Association. I use the term who I guess is in form of the traditional way that we interpret the discipline now. Wanted to start a new denomination, and I believe it was a year ago or more, they decided the name of that new denomination that they were going to form was called the Global Methodist Church. And so in 2022, they were ready to meet for General Conference, do the agreement that people could leave and join the Global Methodist Church without any sort of financial repercussions. But since that got postponed 2 years further down the line, the Global Methodist Church got impatient, I would say, or they decided, we can't wait, whatever. And so May 1st, today, is the official launch of the Global Methodist Church. They are now a denomination as of this very Sunday. They don't have any members or churches, I don't think officially yet, unless by the end of the day some join on. And so that's where we are. There is a denomination that is, I'd say they like the discipline that was more traditional from 30 or 40 years ago, and the United Methodist Church has been trying to steer, in their opinion, a more morally applicable way ever since. And so that leaves us in a spot. I'm not going to be in an argument on which side you are on or which side our church is on. I don't think that's where we need to be today. But I'll tell you the options of what could happen from this point forward. The Global Methodist Church has a book of discipline that they created, as well as the United Methodist Church has a book of discipline. I encourage anyone who wants to know about where the Global Methodist Church stands to read what they would say is their book of discipline. And I can give you a copy of my book of discipline that stands today, and you can see where we are. And there's Miss Barbara and others have sheets that can tell you this is where things changed. These are things that are similar. Here's are things that are changed. I'd say the majority of things that changed are the Global Methodist Church's stance on that clergy cannot be professing homosexuals, and as well as that I as a clergy, cannot perform a gay wedding. And the Global Methodist Church would say that's where we're sticking to. The United Methodist Church's plan is to deviate from those two things largely and allow for homosexuals to be ordained, as well as any clergy, I believe, initially can decide if they want to perform gay marriages or not. And so that's the two options. There's a lot more than that. I think that's just the surface level. I think there's a whole lot more that's frustration underneath all those things, but I'd say that's definitely the presiding issue. And the point where we're at now is any church can leave to become a Global Methodist Church if they want to, but at this point there's a penalty to do so. You have to pay 2 years of your apportionments, as well as you have to pay the pension for all the pastors that you have had in your church, plus a 10% increase to make sure that they have all of their ducks in a row, so that any pastor who is retired from this church continues to get paid for their retirement in the future. And I think that at least that is a very important step to make sure that, I'm sure every pastor you've had who you love, you want to make sure that they're taken care of in their retirement. So that's what it would cost. I don't know what that number would be, because every church would be different. And then that's what the cost would be to leave. The other option is the Texas Annual Conference is meeting in say it again? May the 29th. Is it Labor Day or Memorial Day? I always get those confused. My apologies. And at that meeting, there is three amendments that are going forward. One is that the annual conference allows any church to leave, to go anywhere they want to without any sort of penalty. That's one thing they're going to vote on. The second, I don't know if they have the authority to do that. And the second one is as an annual conference where they could vote to leave and go to the Global Methodist Church. And both of the amendments that are after that will depend on which side you're on. So one wants to lower the threshold to 50% plus one delegates at annual conference can make the deciding factor if our whole annual conference leaves the denomination and goes. The other one is 2/3 plus one, and that's also obviously be a higher threshold in order for an entire annual conference to leave and go to the Global Methodist Church. I would say if it's 50% plus one, the whole annual conference has enough votes to do it. If it's 2/3 plus one, the annual conference doesn't. Largely, I would say, as pastors, they're a lot more leaning towards staying United Methodist. Most congregations lean in the opposite direction and would like to be Global Methodist. That's just, if you were to say the delegates from the pastor's standpoint would be for staying, most of the delegates for laity would be for moving to a Global Methodist Church. That's just where the votes would probably align, but nobody knows. That's all a hypothetical. But you should be aware of at least what all the things are going on and what's going on. We'll go down the road that we think is best, but I would like to allow our leadership board to put a task force together to look at all the options, to see how much it would cost to stay, or to leave, what we would like to do to stay, and I'd like for them to explore all the documents, both practices, and then I would like for them as a task force to recommend to the church what they would perceive the direction that we go, because this is not my church, this is y'all's church. So, questions? Would you like a mic? Would that be better for everybody? Yep. 1 second.
No, I want to know, how are you going to lead this church? Under the LBGT or under the old?
Okay. How would I lead this church? Well, when I was appointed to the church, the district superintendent asked me, "Where's my stance?" And I would be a global Methodist. I'm a traditionalist in as far as the church. So whatever this church decides to do, I will go with the Global Methodist Church as a pastor. If y'all stay a United Methodist Church, then I would be appointed at a different church, which y'all might like. But that's fine. So that's where I would be. But like I said, I have to make that choice for myself, and that's not the choice that I'm going to make for the church. So. Yep, we have one delegate per pastor. So I have one delegate that is for me and one delegate that's for Kenny. Yeah, well, thank you. How many delegates does our church have per annual conference? And that is, we have one delegate per pastor. So me and Kenny serve as delegates for the pastoral, and everything has to be matched even, 50-50. So for every delegate that's a pastor, there's a laity delegate. We also, for all the retired pastors that are in our conference, there's a whole group that are district delegates to match up for all retired pastors, because they also have a vote at annual conference as well. So I believe we have, I wished I could tell you, I just know that Lynn is one, because I just made her for Kenny. Do you know who our other one is? Kim Ford. There you go. Hi, Kim. Okay, and we used to have district delegates, but because this is a contentious annual conference, those that are trying to throw the vote in their favor, they have been recruiting people to match up in their favor early. So that's the way politics works. So if our annual conference stays in the United Methodist Church, and it comes to the point to where churches have to decide whether they want to stay or go, then it would come to a vote at the church. If our annual conference decides to go Global Methodist and every church leaves, then we would have to take a vote to stay United Methodist. So if our annual whichever way our annual conference goes, we would then have to decide, do we want to align with that direction or not? And that's when we would come to a vote. Our hope is, whatever direction it is, that we do it in such a way that we pay no money. I mean, that's the goal. Stay United Methodist. If we have to pay to leave, then then the hope is that we don't pay anything. So that some churches are like, we're tired of the fight, we're just ready to leave, whatever it costs, come what may. And we're not in that situation, so. Yes, ma'am. One way or the other, that's correct. Will every church have to make this decision? So if our annual conference was to stay United Methodist and our church wanted to stay United Methodist, then we would never have to take a vote. It just kind of stays the same. If our annual conference stays United Methodist and we want to go to the Global Methodist Church, then we would have to take a vote. So we'd only have to take a vote if our opinion is different from the annual conference's direction. Sure. Other questions? I don't know if I have answers to everything, but I will. It has been challenged. Yes, largely. Has it been challenged in court? If you want to see what this looks like messy, look at the Presbyterian Church. About 5 or 6 years ago, this was ruled out in the courts all over the place, and I think everyone saw what they did, and nobody wants that to happen. They want to make sure whatever churches decide that it's not messy and thrown out through the courts. So I think everybody, no matter what side you're on, has that as the goal. So we hope it doesn't come to that. Yes, Bubba. I have no idea, but I trust your judgment way more than mine. Okay. Great. If you have other questions, and I know that there's a lot, whatever you see in the news, I just wanted you to be aware of what's going on so that you're not caught off guard. And I think if we'll create a task force of the church to help make that direction and look at all those things, and then we'll continue to proceed as we need to. But I just didn't want you to be not knowing what's going on and kind of lay the cards out. So if you have any more questions, send them to us, or me, or Kenny, or Mike Seegers. Mike's just an amazing gift of God of research. He can read books of disciplines and all sorts of things in amazing ways. So anything that you have question-wise, we'll do our best to try to answer. All right. Music notes. Chad.
Wesley, thank you so much for letting me follow that topic. And let me start out with any questions, write them down. Now, just real briefly to talk about the worship music. We all know that we brought Virgilio on full-time as our worship leader. He got sick before Christmas, and he has struggled mightily to come back, and it's just, he's still struggling with that. In fact, he was in the hospital this week, some issues going on. He was here Easter and, did his best, and he called later that day, I believe, and tendered his resignation. He's got to put his health first, and we all respect that. David is a part-time employee. He was meant to be temporary. He's been temporary, but he's had to step in the role to help fill in for Virgilio. We don't know right now what the situation is going to be with David. David got with Wesley, said, he's got his own plans too. Even for him, he knew it was temporary, so we just don't know what's going on. Wesley did a fantastic job today. That said, we can't wear Wesley out either. So there's more questions than we have answers right now. So it's one of those we're just going to, almost like the other stuff, we just got to wait and see what's going to happen. We'll look at what our options are and go from there. It is nice to know that we do have a great fill-in occasionally. So just bear with us. The leadership board and Wesley will be looking at it and see which direction we go on worship. I will tell you, I know nobody's ever going to be completely happy. David is more geared toward the contemporary style of worship. Virgilio was awesome on the traditional with the hymns. We've tried to split it down the middle, as y'all have seen. We've had some contemporary songs up there. We've had the traditional hymns up there. I think we're going to try and continue in that model for now. And like I said, let's just see where we end up.
Just two side notes on that. One is our leadership board and many others have said we don't want to make any decisions for a while. We're going to spend some time in prayer. And so I'm going to invite the church to about a month, if not longer, season of prayer to discern where God is leading us and what God wants to do through this. I don't think it's right for anybody right now just to kind of heal and figure out what our direction is. So we might not have the same direction going forward. We're going to pray about it. We're going to listen to the congregation during this time and just kind of do a little bit of a reset and a prayer focus. And then we're going to kind of work slowly, as I told someone this morning, as fast as we can, but as slow as we must in order to kind of get this right. So don't expect anything fast. I have no direction. Nobody is down the pipeline ready. Nothing, which is why I was up here this morning. But we'll do it as slow as we can and as fast as we can, but as slow as we must, allowing God to lead us and discerning through that. So you'll see more about that. We're going to have some nights of prayer up here at the church over the next couple of weeks. We're going to send, text messages to everybody who sign up and ask you to pray on a certain time of the day, just to continue to be in prayer for that direction, for God's guidance in the midst of it. So I just wanted to add that. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Appreciate that. I don't have anyone else, so if you like it, good. If you don't, I'm sorry. Yes, Miss Debbie. Got it. Yep. So our pianist everyone was paid on the stage except for Corey, the young lady who was singing. She was never paid. She was just to tag along with David. And they were dating, and now they're engaged. And they just bought a house in spring. And I think it was always a struggle for them to drive here and back and forth. So they're ready to kind of be closer to home and find a new direction. So this became a good spot just to kind of push reset and refocus. So that she was paid. Virgilio was paid. They're all paid in different amounts. But largely, Debbie is making what Sheila used to make. And Sherry? Sharon, thank you. I don't know why my mind went blank. Sharon doesn't do this for the money. She doesn't need to do it, so she makes a little bitty bit. And she's loves to travel with her daughter, and so sometimes she's here, sometimes she can't. So we even budgeted her here about half the time. So when she's here, she's great, and when she's not, that's the luxury of not being able to be on your own schedule. So. I don't know if there's cards for Virgilio. Did we get those? If anyone had a chance to sign those. And I could be wrong because things changed. I went to visit him in the hospital the day of his surgery. We spent most of the morning with him, and I don't know if you know, there was a clot in his heart. It's about 3 millimeters. It was only by the grace of God. He showed up to the doctor with it, and they didn't have an appointment for him or know why he was there, but he said, I'm already here, do something, and it's only because of that they found it. And they said, don't go anywhere, but go straight to the hospital. He said he debated going to Chipotle first because he knew it would be his last meal. But he was a good boy and went straight to the hospital. And so they are going to try to dissolve that clot through medicines. over the next couple of weeks. I don't know how long that takes. Someone's smarter than I, but they did see that he might have had a mild heart attack at some point when they went in to do the angioplasty. So it's going to be a recovery for him and his heart. Most of his conditions with fluid buildup and not being able to breathe all kind of went back to the heart. So I think, is that what you remember as well, Carla? Yeah, so he has a long journey ahead of him to get better, but that is everyone's hope. All right, if you have anything else. Yes, ma'am. That'll be a discussion that we have with him and our board when that time comes. I can't give you an answer right now. It just depends. But it's not off the table. All right, and Miss Sherry, I believe you're next. And Mike as well. Oh, Mike might be first. He said, I don't think so.
Yeah, right. I do have visuals that are coming because I'm going to be talking to you about the renovation of the fellowship hall. And it's something that we all know has probably been needed for a long time. There we go. I'm going to turn my back on you for a minute to describe what's up there. The blue part is the fellowship hall. The way it's drawn up there, about a third from the entrance. Let me back up one step. The green is the hallway. The entrance into the fellowship hall, when you walk in, the first thing that, well, there are going to be several different things that you'll see, but one is the entrances over at the kitchen are going to be closed off. You're not going to have the accordion pieces that are in there, and if you've ever worked back there, which I know a lot of you guys have, they're kind of falling apart anyway. And then look back about 1/3 of the way into the fellowship hall. It looks like a nice little rectangular area. That's going to go all the way up to the ceiling, but it's my understanding we're not cutting into the ceiling, correct? Because guess what that ceiling has in it? The same thing that the office has in it. So we're getting as close as we can, but not cutting into it, which means we don't have to pay for abatement there. Then when you go back behind that, directly behind that is going to be an area where a sound system would be equipped, built, and all the way back to the very back is the stage area that's going to be elevated. That means that yes, maybe at some time we will want a contemporary service down there, but for present, when we're having luncheons, when we're having guest speakers, when we're doing that kind of thing, we've got a wonderful setup down there to go in and have a big open area where guests can be seated, a nice entrance into that area where we can welcome people, and then walk around. At one time, I had asked Wesley, because I'm such a visual learner, I like to see things set up. So whether you notice or not, it wasn't an accident, but Wesley put a huge screen where that rectangle would be so that anybody that walked in could get an idea of what this new area was going to look like. At first, I thought, oh my gosh, those poor people behind that screen, if we have to seat people back there, they're not going to see anybody up on that stage. But it's not like that at all. We're not losing but just a little bit of the openness of that fellowship hall. And what we're replacing it with is a nice, new, clean-looking area where we can invite people in. Currently, the floor is going to be, is it called tiled carpet? Tiled carpet. I was a little apprehensive about that because I know what it's looked like in the past. But being the mayor's wife with the new fire station EMS, they have tiled carpeting in their big conference room down there. Y'all, it is beautiful. And what they did when they put that in, they bought a bunch of extra ones. The Rec Cleasel, the fire department chief, said that they've got stored back, so if anything does happen to one of those tiles, they can pull it up and put down a new one. So Wesley and I are going to take a field trip in that next week or so, and we're going to go down to the fire station. I've already seen it. It looks great, but I wanted him to see it also before we actually started doing anything. And guys, we're talking way in the future right now, too. Okay, we're back to the blue again, because I want to tell you what that little side part over there is. There's a little indention over there that, again, used to be behind some big accordion-looking doors. If everything works out, that's going to be like a welcoming area, more of a gathering area, with a door that would go back out to the parking lot. And then it would be covered also. That was one thing that several of us asked questions about. Is that what we really want to spend our money on? Well, guess what? Fire safety rules say we have to have an exit on that side. That's not a choice that we get to pick. We've been asking the architect for the bids so that we could move forward with this. And Wesley, you have more details on that than I do. You want to share the new details?
Sure. We submitted the plans from the architect to the city. The city says you don't have enough plans, so we have to get more engineers to do pieces. So we're retroactively had to hire an engineer to do this electrical plans and the HVAC plans and a lot more than you need to know. So as soon as those are done, then the city will hopefully be happy. And we want to make sure the city's happy, right, Paul? And then once we can do that, and then the hallway section, I don't know if you've ever been up there, but our hallway is they purposefully lowered it about 2 feet lower than the structure is when they built the building. There's just kind of this vacant area there, and so it's always been the thought, why can't we just raise the ceiling up a few feet, because the structure is already there and you wouldn't really have to change much. And so he put that in the plans, and little did we know that our office was going to flood and that all of our systems were down that way, and we actually probably need to open the ceiling up to run all of our new conduit down the hallway anyway. So one of the parts of this is also raising the ceiling in the hallway throughout that area. And if you have ever been in a small space and you've seen raised ceilings, it'll make a tremendous difference in the heights. But those are all options. We're still looking to see if we have to have that entrance. Maybe what the city doesn't know won't kill them, all these little things. You didn't hear that, I'm just kidding. So we're trying to see, how much of this we have to do. The architect looked and he saw every single code and every single thing that we would have to do in order to bring it up to code. And those are all the things. Once you touch one thing, it leads to another thing, leads to another thing, leads to another. So and there's lots of questions on that. There's a couple of pictures. These are quick renderings that I did. That's the wall with the sound booth on the back side, kind of a lobby area in the middle, and then the back side would be its setup. You can see a screen for a modern worship service. Is there another? Yep, that's one closer in. And then keep going. That's looking at the entrance doors from the back side. So it just gives you a visual of what the place would look like in a different environment. Whether it looks like that or not, don't say those are the colors we're going to use or anything like that. That's just a general idea. We're not going to sit here and debate colors. I've been in the church long enough to know that. That's just a general idea for that. What's the real reason for that is things, we're looking at ideas like family movie nights, where families could come in and watch a movie and sit on the grounds. Vacation Bible school, we'd have kids have all of our productions there, and then instead of on pews, they could jump up and down and dance. I think it would be great for our venue, but also one day this ceiling is going to need to be redone. And if that ever happens, then we can't be worshiping in here, so it provides a great opportunity to have a secondary space that we can escape to when this eventually needs to be redone at some point down the road. So that's the rationale and the thoughts behind the why we're looking at that project. Plus, if you've ever met down there, you know it's louder than Hades, and so it's also an opportunity to address the acoustics in the room so that we can actually hear what's going on. And then the one that we didn't plan for, Ash Wednesday, our toilet upstairs, the little hose that connects the toilet, decided that it wanted to be free, and decided to baptize the upstairs, and then it decided to baptize Kenny's office and rain, and then a little in my office, and then we had about 3 inches of water upstairs and 3 inches downstairs, and we have insurance that is coming and helping. So Mike's going to come and share with you what our update is for that. Oh, question. Yes, Miss Barber. That's right. There's still a closet in the plans. It's just about half the size of what it currently is. The chairs will largely be already set up, so not a need to store those as much, but there's plenty of room for tables as well as some chairs, extra chairs in the closet. But that's a great question. We'll make sure that every single chair is allocated for in the closet before we do anything. Another question? Yes, Ms. One of our major reasons is if we do anything in there, the kitchen, especially the equipment, is very loud. And so one of our hopes was by closing it off, allow us to be able to control the sounds in the room. That's our major concern. So if there is a way to do both of those things, we will ask that question. I don't know what that answer would be in my mind, but if there is, we can. That makes complete sense. Yes, ma'am. That's right. So we, the question was, how can we take care of the audio problems in the room? So part of this is the structural part, but then there's a fancy term, AVL, so it stands for audio, video, lighting, and there's separate people who will do that piece, and they're currently designing that simultaneously with the architect. So we'll have a 16 by, ratio, a large movie screen kind of on one side, so for movies, that's part of it, with a projector, that's part of the plan. Lighting for the stage, as well as for the whole room, we're gonna increase our lighting and put LED lights in so that it's more energy efficient. And then there's also going to be great audio. So double speakers, one in the front, one about halfway, so the people in the back can hear as well. And all of that will be part of the project. Yep, carpet will help. The chairs in the room that have like cushioning will help absorb the sound. Those are all not choices by accident. Those are all in order to try to absorb the sound. And then we just talked to the audio guy. He's going to put all the system in, and if it still sounds like it's echoing, we can add acoustic panels on the walls. But he would rather make sure that he can't adjust the room through his fancy knobs first. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So that's what she was trying to describe was, so the wall's in the middle, and if we put up some screens in the middle where that booth would be, There's lots of room where the chairs would be for a worship space or any other time for sit down. But then on the left and the right-hand side of that wall provides for 2 tables as well. And you can see very well from both of those spots. And then the center part that would be directly behind the wall, that would become our serving area. So you don't actually lose any space from the amount of chairs and serving that we currently have. We just kind of laid it out differently. Yep, and the whole thing is, so as he said, it can't go up through the wall. The whole center thing is also temporary in a way, because it's not, it can also, if we change it and we don't want that there, we need to change it to another space in the future, it can easily just kind of be unscrewed from the top wall and taken out very easily. So it's kind of, in a way, temporary in case it needs to be adjusted in the future. Or if the service grows, you can just take the whole thing and scoot it backwards or forward. So trying to account for that as well. Great. Mm-hmm. Well, the stuff, all the junk in the back is our offices, and it's the music suite upstairs, which has all been boxed up for potential taking out all the material out. So that's not going to be there, hopefully, long term. If it is, God bless us all. And then the storage room, we're also using some of that space for boxes and stuff from our offices. But a lot of the stuff is mostly tables and chairs, which can be reallocated and fits in this space. Some of it that's chairs, we won't need the storage for that because we'll replace those chairs in a different capacity. So it's mostly tables that we need storage for. Great question. There's a lot of junk in there. So our hope is to perhaps do another spring thing, kind of sell off of all of our stuff back there and let the community or anybody in the church who needs some of that stuff, if you want gently flooded furniture, come and get it. Yes. I was wondering when you were going to ask the question. Yep. So some of you who know the finances of churches, you know that we have an operating budget, which is what y'all give toward. And then there's this other budget, which is budget that can only be used for facilities and maintenance. And those two budgets can't cross over. And anytime you spend money on a facility or sell money of a facility or raise money for a facility, you can't spend it for operating budget. So currently, we have sold 2 parsonages that are sitting in an account, as well as the money that y'all raised previously for other building projects. So as we look in the future for things, the money that was raised for new buildings projects can only be used to build a new building. So we can't use any of that fund for this project because it's only a new building that we can use it for. And so it would be mostly from the sale of the 2 parsonages that would go to fund this project. And that's the only way that we can purpose that money is for enhancements to the facility. So it's completely, I know you'd think, well, we're raising money. Well, we might have $5 million or $10 or $20 million in that fund. We can't touch it for normal operating expenses. It has to go to building maintenance or buildings. So that, as many people have told me, people gave that money or have that money to do work in ministry. It's not meant to sit in an account somewhere. So frankly, I'm working to spend that money and so that it's actually doing something and not just sitting there in the bank. So, what else? Mr. Mike? Yeah, thank you.
I think Matt has some overheads for me. This is my security blanket, just in case it doesn't work. And I have some numbers on it, which is, I have to remember I'm a retired engineer, so I go with numbers and things like that. So our home, next one. And Wesley just said that we had the Ash Wednesday flood. Maybe we'll call it that. I just call it the water damage of March 2022. But maybe we need to change the name on it. And the question is hey, why aren't we doing something in the offices? And I think that's a good question. And before we have a water damage sale, maybe we need to see what the insurance company's going to do, because so far they've not been forthcoming with much information at all. And what's happened is that from the time that the water was discovered, we had ServPro in here that day to start cleaning up and start drying up. And they ran the dryers for 12 days and still didn't get all of it dry. Some of it's behind the bookshelves and stuff like that, so it's still ongoing. But we told them that, you know, before you start tearing stuff out, there's asbestos in there. We think there was in here. As you can see, this band right here has been abated already. Maybe you don't look up very often, but I do. Every time I walk in, I say, is it still there? But this piece here has got asbestos in it, and that piece has asbestos in it. The walls don't have it because they're stucco or gunite, whatever you want to call it. But if there's a place that's got sheetrock in it, it probably does. And when it was tested here, where there's sheetrock, it was in the tape mud. So we had it tested upstairs. It's in the ceiling, it's in the walls, and it's in the floor tiles. And it's in the floor tiles mastic also. So we had it tested, and then we received an estimate from a company that does asbestos abatement, and the company that's required as a third party to audit or to manage the abatement to make sure that it's done properly, it's done according to state rules, laws, and regulations. So the first company sent in the request to the state, and it's called a 10-day report. They have to send the information to the state. The state has 10 days to comment on it, and then we can start the abatement. So we could actually start the abatement about the 28th of April. But the abatement company, for a job this size, they don't want to start on the end of the week. They want to start on Monday. So we were going to start on May 1st, or May 2nd, rather, tomorrow. And we came to that settlement, that conclusion last week. We said, okay, we need to tell the school about this. We had conferences with the school, with the teachers. Sherry went down and talked to them. There's a lot of anxiety dealing with this, and so we thought we had it worked out. And then we said, well, maybe we better tell the parents, of course. They may want to not have their child here when we're doing abatement, although abatement is okay from the standpoint that this area that the office is in is going to be put into a bubble. It's going to be all enclosed in a plastic coating. It's going to be all taped up, sealed, and then there will be vacuum drawn on that room out of the bubble, so air can only get into it, not out of it. So if you're drawing a vacuum in it, you got an exhaust, right? So it goes through a series of HEPA filters. So this third-party testing company is going to be monitoring that to make sure that there's no fibers escaping. It's all contained inside. Everything is taken down, and whenever the abatement company is done, there will be no walls left. There will only be studs. All the walls come down, the ceiling, all that will be put in bags and hauled off and put into a special landfill for that type of hazardous waste. That being said, during the time that we have gotten those estimates in, we finally got word from the insurance company that we can go ahead with the abatement. But we've gotten those two estimates in. I've gotten some other estimates in that are supportive of the abatement. We have 5 purchase orders issued for that work. We have also been gathering specifications for the renovation work. I'm used to, when we have floods, is just going in and say, okay, we got a claim. Somebody comes in, an adjuster comes in, looks at it, he'll send it to the home office, they'll send a check back. These guys want to know, well, what all was in there? How much did it cost? What was it all originally? What was it now? Where do you get the money? Where do you get that number from? So we're doing a lot of work for the insurance company, and so far they're not talking to us. So frustration work level is kind of going up on this side. So the parents hearing about doing the asbestos abatement while their child is here, we seriously underestimated the fallout of that, and that was not a pretty sight. We went back to the company that does the abatement and said, we know you want to do it on the 2nd. Can you move it out some? Well, we can go to the 8th. Well, then that's still before the school's out. So we worked on it last Friday for all day, talking to those guys, and finally they said, well, the reason we don't want to do it late in May is because in early June, we have contracts with the schools to do abatement so that they can do their summer maintenances before the school starts in the fall. But I said, well, see what your guys will say. So they took it back to their supervisors and talked to them about doing this. And they said, well, we can do things for critical services. We'll do it. We'll make it work. So we're going to start the abatement on the 23rd instead of the 3rd. So we're 3 weeks further down the road before anything happens. But it's for a good cause. It'll be after school. The 4-year-olds can graduate. So we're in good shape. I hope the mothers are happy. We are. I think we got a win-win out of it. So that's that situation. So it's 3 more months, 3 more weeks down the road before we start. One of the results that comes out of this is having no walls in the office area. We have all good visibility of the studs and what the structure looks like and what's supporting the choir loft and the ceiling. So having that in hand, then we can say what kind of modifications we might like to make in the office area. It's one of those things like don't let a good crisis go to waste. So here's an opportunity to take the office that was built when we had a pastor and his secretary, and it had back doors and things like that in offices, and take it and make it a modern office. But we haven't started that process yet. We won't until we see what the structure looks like inside. I think we know what it looks like, but we need to verify that. I can tell you firsthand, whenever we did this modification, where this stairway landing was supposed to be, there was a column there that was not on the drawings. There was a pipe that went up and supported that beam up there somehow. So that's why we wound up with a little closet there for the baby grand. That's where the landing was supposed to be. So we had to redesign it. That's what Wesley's interested in, looking at the walls in there. So what surprises do we see up front? We also want to get the electrical receptacles out of the floor since they were all underwater. Not a good thing to have. The asbestos abatement will be done in two bubbles. One bubble will be the office area, and that will be bubbled off, and also the one for the choir loft and the restroom on the west side. Those walls will come out, and also all the flooring in the choir loft will be torn out. The problem is when you do the bubble upstairs, you've got to take all the debris out. So you can't go through another bubble, getting debris out, so they're going to do one bubble at a time. But I don't know which one's first, downstairs or upstairs. And they'll probably decide that on the day they close them in. But just to let you know, at that time, that section is going to be closed off entirely. So we'll have a Sunday or at least one, maybe two, where we'll have to all come in through these side doors or through the front. We can't come through that office bubble like we usually do. A little inconvenience, but doable. Then after the walls have been completely torn out and we look at it and do some idea of what a new design would be, we'll be getting back with you, probably before that. Also, we'll let you know whenever we get something from the insurance. We don't know what they're going to allow us for reconstruction. All the estimates I have are based on putting it back like it is with the wainscoting, which is expensive. We're thinking about going back with just sheetrock walls and more modern look, so we can save from the wainscoting and use that in other ways as an example of what we'll do a little different. I think it's Q&A time now. Any questions? Jan? Yes. The area that will be abated out of the office area includes the U-shaped hallway around the offices. And it'll be closed off where this piece here will be open over to where you start the terrazzo. And that area will be closed off. So those two classrooms, the Seeker's classroom and the New Hope classrooms, for the period of the abatement will be closed off. It will not be accessible. So that's one Sunday or two, depending on when they're doing it. So it'll be at least one Sunday. So you may have to double up or what they call it, hot bed, if you're in the Navy. Yeah, hot bunks. Yeah. This is a question. Chuck?
Yeah, you mentioned the work being done in the old fire loft. Has there been any thought about having an opportunity to work with that room, repurpose it, or do something else with it?
Not yet. Not yet, but that's certainly in the back of my mind. I don't know what will come out of that, but that's nothing. We're not doing a lot of reconfiguration work in there, other than tearing it down. We still have the restrooms up there. It's like one of those things. Like, I don't think we need the restrooms that much, but when you got them, you don't throw them away. Sooner or later, you might need it, but at this time, we haven't thought too much about it. Main thing I thought has been associated with the office area. And see, I had a question in the back. There was another question back here. Hello? I'm getting dry mouth. Desiree was back there just a minute ago and she had a question. She raised her hand and then all of a sudden she disappeared. Maybe it's something with one of the children.
Thank you, Mike. All right, so very good. Thank you, Mike, for all he does, because he has been taking over this or looking at all the details and fine print and and doing an extraordinary job dealing with insurance. Anyone want to help Mike out with the insurance, just let him know. He'll be glad. There's a pastor who's in our conference. His name is Morris Mathis. Morris was at Clear Lake Methodist, and my in-laws say one time that there's a church bus could not fit underneath the awning or the drive-through at the church, and would you know, one day a delivery truck backed into it, and insurance had to replace it, and so he raised it up 3 feet so that the bus could fit underneath it. And he said, "Wesley, never miss a good opportunity." And so that's what we're doing with the offices. They were designed for a couple of people. We have 6 people on staff now, so we're not going to waste this opportunity. We might not look the way that it used to look, but I think it's going to be a good opportunity. Would I have chosen to do that first? Absolutely not. There's much bigger things, but that's what God has given us, and so we're going to do what we have in front of us. So, and then lastly, we just have one last initiative. Me and Kenny worked through this ministry plan for our future, and we're working on that step by step. And we've had a lot of distractions between our initial conversation and now, but we're still going to hold to it. One of our goals, we think it's a linchpin thing, and that is we work on this thing, a lot of other things fall into place. We're going to work on volunteerism in the church. We talked about budget earlier. The best way to not spend money for staff is to allow y'all to be our staff. And so we're going to work to train our congregation to continue to do the work of the ministry. As me and Kenny looked at what our job description is, the Book of Discipline says our number one goal is to equip you to be ministers in the Christ, not for us to do it. And so we are going to hold a goal of having 50% of our average worship attendance volunteering in the church. Let me set the criteria for that. Volunteering is on a regular basis, so that means you can working for Vacation Bible School is not counting because that's 1 week. I need you to be in something on a consistent basis at least once a month. We have a lot of opportunities to do that, though. Everywhere from Miss Roxanne has a group of ladies that work in her house now to help with books and counting and all sorts of wonderful things. She promises that you get to pet her dogs and help to let them out into the backyard. We have another team with Matthew in the back with our audio video lighting team. He would just like me to make the announcement that instead of glaring at him when there's a mistake, to volunteer with him. Said you cannot have a criticism of what they're doing unless you're willing to help out. So we have a lot of people who have lots of comments, but not a lot of volunteers. And so we are thankful for Miss Julie, who's here every single week to help out in the back. And Matthew, who stepped up, as well as our newbie, I can't remember his name. Is it Caleb? Caleb, their grandson, who went to ACC for media technology, and so he's also helping. So we need about 4 or 5 people there. Let me tell you why that's so important. Like, I can't tell you how many people I run into who say that I can't come still, or I'm sick. My husband has been ill for 6 months, but they watch every single week online, and we can't continue at this pace of our volunteers to allow those people to still be connected to our church, so we desperately need volunteers there. We also, Miss Linda is our hospitality coordinator, and my goal is we might not out-production all the other churches in town, but they will not out-welcome us, and so we are working in order to equip every single one of you to hold a door for people on a Sunday morning. And you'll be a door holder regardless of what your job is, because our job in hospitality is to open the door for people to come into the church and to experience God's grace. And so all of us can smile except for a few of you. You should not volunteer for that. I'd say 85% of you can hold a door with a smile on a Sunday morning, or make refreshments. I mean, that's such an easy thing that we can all do. What am I missing? Our care team, You have an amazing group of people that consistently goes and visits people in homes and hospitals. Kenny's been training them and equipping them for that. All sorts of ways that we are helping kids ministry, right? Why didn't you stop me, Chad? Our kids ministry and our student ministry just thriving in ways beyond what I ever imagined our church could be capable of. And it's all because of volunteers that do that week after week after week, but they do it every single week. Many of them want to come to worship, but they can't come to worship. So we need some more people to step in and to step alongside of our current volunteers so they can worship in church. So there's lots of opportunities for us to volunteer, and also when we volunteer, we save money. Those both go hand in hand. And when we all volunteer, we also have more ownership that this is our church, and we're willing to do whatever it takes to welcome and to make this our church home. And so that's our goal. And in 2 weeks, the Sunday after Mother's Day, someone correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to have a volunteer Sunday. I'm going to preach a little bit about volunteering, but then we're going to have booths in our sanctuary for the rest of the service. And you're going to go around and you can interview at all of our different stations and sign up. We have people who are already ready to call you back and to make sure that you show your butt up whenever you say you're going to volunteer somewhere. And we are excited, and I think that it's an attainable goal. It's about 30 additional volunteers that we're going to try to get into a rotation between now and December. I think it will make a huge difference for the life of our church. So that's our goal. And if you aren't volunteering, watch out, because we're going to come after you. All right. Any other questions, comments? Let's pray. Beautiful and loving God, we have challenges before us, but that just also means there's opportunities to walk in faith with you. We have opportunities where we've already seen you at work in the life of this church. We've seen young adults that have come and found an opportunity for church where they can serve. We've seen young kids who walk here every single Sunday without their parents because this is a place that loves and cares for them. We've seen youth that are finding their next step, perhaps their vocation of understanding that you are the Lord of their life. We're seeing that you are at work in this place, and for those things we celebrate that you are at work here. And we have an obligation, every single one of us, to step into that commitment as members of this church, that we will support it with our gifts, with our service, with our witness, and every part of who we are, praying for the direction that you would have us to go. And so may we come here today praising you for the ways that you have been at work, trusting you for the things that are still uncertain, but also on our knees as we continue to listen for your wisdom and for your guidance in the days and the months and the years to come. And all the church of God said together, amen.